already an exciting hour and a half. I'd just like to ask the panelists to please switch on the video. I can see Dr. Makondo has got his video on, and maybe Dr. Klingner. Both of you are on. Thank you very much. So yeah, without further ado, let's kick off this next panel, which is looking at kind of research and innovation. So we've already had like some really exciting discussions. So in this panel, we'll be kind of digging deep into research and innovation and how we can strengthen this innovation engine. As we've seen in the previous panel, we're seeing robotics taking up more and more spaces and use cases increasing over industry. And we're also seeing like a huge developing kind of workforce and talent coming through. So research and innovation is one of the key things that underpins this. So we have a great panel that we're sure will give us more insights into this. Just by introduction, we have Dr. Anke Klingner, who received a physics diploma at TU Dresden, Germany, and her PhD in microfluidics and electrowetting from ULM University in Germany. She also received a DAD scholarship for exchange at Duke University in the US, and she's currently at the physics department at the German University in Cairo, Egypt. And then following that, we have Dr. Ndivhuwo Makondo, who is a research scientist and manager in data and AI at IBM Research Africa, as well as a visiting research in robotics at Wits University, South Africa. He leads a multidisciplinary team advancing foundational and applied AI research, contributing both to IBM's global AI strategy and the localization of advanced AI technologies across Africa. And before this, he was a robotics researcher at the CSIR's Mobile Intelligence Autonomous Systems Group. Myself, I'm Dr. Paul Amayo. I'm a principal investigator and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town. So I lead a group called the Spatial Intelligence Group that's part of the African Robotics Unit in Cape Town. So just to start off, I'm just going to ask a question to the panelists. And if we read through the report, we'll see that one thing that really stood out to me was this idea that this research and innovation is the base for the robotics ecosystem. So I was wondering what you all kind of thought of the statement, kind of the things that are kind of coming to you now about what this means and what the role of research innovation is, particularly in the African robotics ecosystem. So
I guess I can start.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for having me to address this very important discussion on the African continent in robotics and automation. So yeah, I think research and innovation. I think what that statement really says to me is that we look at research being able to generate foundational knowledge and uncovering new opportunities, right? While innovation transforms those discoveries into solutions that actually add value, tangible value to businesses and societies. And this can lead to job creation. So more broadly, if we merely adopt technologies developed elsewhere, this means that they might not be appropriate for our context, and we may not be able to understand them and know how to adapt them, if at all. For example, they could be too costly for the market, or they could lead to societal challenges. And the flip side to that is, R&D that is based on our own local challenges can lead to discoveries, that are applicable globally and not just locally. For example, we could come up with more efficient algorithms or even cheaper ways of building robots. The one example on that one, I know the University of KwaZulu-Natal, they working on developing, haptics, robot arms and hands that are, reusing materials that are more cheaper. I remember when we had, our ICRA 40 event here in Johannesburg, we did invite our international colleagues that were quite impressed on how cheaply we're able to develop new hardware here in South Africa. And because we have scarcity of resources, so we have to sort of innovate in that space, use our local challenges to come up with new discoveries and efficient ways of developing technology. So it is important that we develop that knowledge and also we're able to translate that knowledge to practical solutions based on our own context.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Klingner, do you have any kind of thoughts on that as well?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to take part in this summit and to get to know all these nice people. Thank you for the invitation. I think it's very important to connect within Africa. And yes, so but I think that research and innovation is very important. The role of universities is very important to give the students like the knowledge of the current state of art, and when they go into the industry and develop the robotics in their companies, for instance, that they have a background knowledge what is available and what are the standards, for instance, about the accuracy and how to test robotic systems, how make some pipelines, and also to teach them at the university how to gain knowledge even in their career. I mean, they study maybe 5 years, but then they should have a continuing learning throughout their career, how to understand the knowledge and where to get it in the thing. And also in the research and innovation, I think it is nice to give them both simulation and experiments together to combine this for later on. And also universities can make in this innovation apply for patents, for instance, and register patents. And this is then a basis to work for the industry.
Thank you both for these wonderful remarks. I think one thing that stood out for me is both of you mentioned this word, which is knowledge. It's about knowing. So whether you're getting technology from somewhere else, whether it's coming or homegrown kind of technology, we need to know what is being used in order for it to be transformed into something that can be useful for society. So I think this knowledge creation, wherever it is from, that's one of the spurs for innovation. Obviously, research is based off of knowledge. So yeah. I want to take us with a slightly provocative question to you, Dr. Makondo. So one thing that's been highlighted in this report is that university labs across Africa are the ones that are leading research of innovation. And as somebody who has a foot in both industry and kind of university, maybe two questions for you is, like, in many places, we don't see such a big distinction. So why is there a distinction that we're seeing in Africa? And what do you think the role of each of these are for the general kind of ecosystem?
All right. So I'm kind of at the bridge, right, between academia and industry. So at my time at the CSR, so that's an industrial research lab, not IBM Research. It's a commercial research lab. But I do have exposure to either side, right? So I think there are a number of things. One is when we look at our industries in South Africa and probably even Africa more broadly, is that they predominantly consume technology and not producing it. Right? And I think the same applies to robotics technology, right? And I think all the technologies that are used and are consumed from outside. And thus the focus in industry is to solve business problems rather than developing technology that would be used to solve business problems. So I think this leads to industry not investing in research and innovation, either by having their own internal R&D labs or by funding research at universities at levels required. So there is some funding here and there. Usually it's for tax incentives or for talent development, right? And whenever there are innovation initiatives in industry, they're usually overshadowed by day-to-day activities that drive the business. So that's what we see is that most research funding comes from the government and mostly goes to universities. And also universities allow freedom of exploration. So I think that can sort of speak to the distinction between this. When we talk about the roles that each can play, I mean, I think, the university develops talent, right, and creates this foundational knowledge. But industry can drive innovation by presenting real-world problems and also domain expertise. However, this does require that the research or the knowledge that's been generated speaks to economic sectors that are driving economic growth, right? And thus creating that incentives for funding to come from industry. So if we give an example with China, so I was in China about 2-3 weeks ago, and I was sort of amazed by how the private sector invests a lot in R&D. Most enterprises have internal R&D organizations. And when I started thinking about it, it's because they're actually producing things that are being exported, especially manufacturing. And R&D is critical when you want to continue to evolve and compete. So they do appreciate R&D. So I think if we look at various sectors in various African countries, we look at what we export and what we import. So just looking at South Africa as an example, we mostly import raw materials and export back finished products. So where is R&D playing there? What I think, what I've seen is, if we look at agriculture or if we look at mining, there is technology that we can use to sort of enhance that, but it's coming from outside. So if we start thinking about how our research and knowledge that we generate can speak to those means of production, but it does require that as academics, we interact with industry so that we can understand better the real world challenges, and we can drive innovation in that way.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And sorry to kind of, I just want to probe this a little bit more. So one of the things that we see in this report is this kind of weak kind of university industry kind of linkage. And I think this mentioning of kind of China where that loop is a little bit stronger. Is there anything kind of practical that we can do, and any practical that you've seen that can be done to maybe strengthen that feedback loop so that it's not just for tax benefits that industry is putting things into the university? Yeah,
I mean, I've seen attempts. It does, on one hand, it does require government to lead. And I think we've seen that with institutions like the CSIR that sort of incentivizes that government grants are actually used to drive in the various sectors. So they come up with strategies that are very sector specific. And then on the other hand, I think us as academics sort of have to try and create these ecosystems that bring in industry. I think it's good that we're seeing a lot of grassroots organizations that are looking to developing talent and building the community, but it sort of excludes industry. And I've also seen a proliferation of events that are more industry focused, but they don't bring in academia. So I think we have to be intentional about creating those ecosystems so that we can speak to research, knowledge, and innovation that can drive problem solving in areas that businesses care about, because industries have their bottom line that they have to care about. And if you don't speak to those, then they're not really incentivized to do that. Of course, governments have to play a major role, but there are challenges there. So we also have a role to play there as researchers.
No, thank you very much. And I'm just jumping onto the last thread on kind of funding. And moving on to you, kind of, Dr. Klingner. I think we can't talk about research without talking about funding, and I'm glad that today in an African Robotics Forum, we can be talking about funding positively, because Egypt are leading the way in terms of research funding. They are the only country in Africa that's meeting the AU's kind of target of 1% of budget of GDP of budget allocated to R&D. So I just wanted to know how this looks like in terms of your own research work, and what maybe other nations and other countries across Africa can maybe take away from this kind of Egyptian example of this. Yeah.
Yes, yes. In Egypt invests in research, mainly research with Europe. There are, and also there is funding agencies called STDF, Science and Technology Development Fund. So they try to initiate projects with, for instance, with China, with America, with Europe. And then it's like mutual funded. There is some funding from Egypt and some funding from the other countries. But before one can apply to such projects, it's of course also important to know the other countries and to have contact points in the other countries. So I think it's also nice in Egypt that there is, for instance, this DAD fund with the German, that a lot of university students are already sent to other countries, and they make networks, and then when they come back, they can initiate and apply for such projects. Okay, so it's two things. One is to fund students in PhD and in master to go abroad in all kinds of countries and establish a network with all kinds of professors. And the other thing is then the second level, when the professors here in Egypt, they apply with, for projects with other countries, that they have this network. Yes.
Okay, no, that's
I think
very...
it would be very important to make more connections even with other African countries. Yes.
No, certainly. I think I'm thinking back to the report where we see collaboration as this really key aspect of scaling an ecosystem. And I'm glad that you spoke about kind of this DAD example, where you have this collaboration between yourselves and Germany, which is a very well established collaboration program. I just want to maybe dig on this, and how does this kind of collaboration work to be kind of mutually beneficial when you're collaborating with, say, countries that are outside of Africa, with Germany, with the, and maybe just drawing on your experience, how do we make it better for other countries in Africa to also establish similar collaborations?
I think the other countries, they also benefit, because some young people come with the new ideas, like what we speak about, the brain drain also, of course, that some young people from Africa or from Egypt go in other countries and innovate there. So this is, yes. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just probing whether there's a blueprint that we can use for other countries, because you've been very successful in kind of collaborating with kind of European countries, and maybe some other African countries have not been able to. And I was just wondering how we could ensure that we can have more collaboration like that.
Yes. Egypt is, I think, also special that they also establish universities with all kind of other countries. Like I'm working in the German university, which is established with Germany together. So there is a lot of cooperation, and people, for instance, from Germany come as master supervisors or PhD supervisors. There's also American University, Canadian University, British University, all kinds of universities in Egypt. So I think Egyptians are very good in networking. Yes.
No, a lesson for us all. Thank you. And maybe looking a little bit internally and maybe more regionally, Dr. Makondo, I know you've been involved in many networks such as ICRAT 40 Africa. How do we build these kind of networks within the silo, within the continent? So we want to break silos. We want to ensure that people are collaborating in the same way. How do we go about building these networks? And how does collaboration look like on a continental scale around robotics?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think if I look at maybe the time I was graduate student, it's probably the same with you, right, and others. There's this culture in many South African universities where research is usually between the supervisor and the student, right? So you don't have these lab settings that sort of already start creating a collaborative culture within, the university or the department or even a research group. So when I did my PhD in Tokyo, in Japan, I was part of a lab. So I was introduced to this culture of labs. And I think at the same time, there were many other fellow, African researchers that were studying abroad that were also introduced to the same culture. And when they came back, they started introducing that culture of building labs. So we can see, you guys have a lab at UCT, there's a lab at Wits University, and many other universities. But I think that culture of having siloed research work within the university still continues. So I think that's the first thing that we need to do. We need to break the silo within the university themselves. So you have faculties that are not speaking to each other. You have a computer science faculty that is developing new knowledge and algorithms, and maybe a faculty in electrical engineering that could sort of use that and apply it in that specific domain. The same with chemical engineering and others, right? So if we get those to start communicating with each other, we can start breaking silos and sort of start doing this at a continental level. But we started to see the introduction of national hubs. So that sort of helped to do this. I think at Wits University, you have the Mind Institute, that is sort of this cross-faculty hub and also has plans to be a cross-university hub for collaboration in both developing, new algorithms, new ways of understanding intelligence, but also how you apply it in different domains. We're also seeing national hubs that are led by government. I think also UCT has an AI initiative that's also looking to do that. So that's sort of, and I think this sort of been led from grassroots organizations. So if we look at the deep learning Ndivhuwo, if you start trying to think about what AI and machine learning looked like before deep learning Ndivhuwo, it was siloed, right? And now we're seeing that it's leading to new grassroots organizations that are even more specialized, looking at natural language processing and also robotics. So I think that's sort of creating this culture of collaborating across the continent. And I think we need to continue to build that and have more and more of those of such organizations.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think you've touched on like really good points. It's kind of breaking it in small ways. You break it within the university, and once you break it within a university, you can break it kind of nationally, and then you start going regionally and maybe kind of continental wide with efforts such as the deep learning in Ndivhuwo. And so it's good to see. And then you can go beyond continents with exchange programs, and maybe South Africa might not be the one, but other African countries, creating this. I'd love to see kind of a double badged university in kind of the Kenya University and somewhere else. So I apologize for putting my Kenyanness forward. But yeah, the last point that maybe I want to talk about is just the role of visibility. So there's a lot of work that happens, and we know that the innovation and research work firstly, it doesn't happen just at universities, and I know that we're a panel of 3 people with PhDs who've gone through the university system, but how can we bring to the forefront of the conversation other types of innovation? You have maker spaces, you have grassroots labs. How can we bring these to the conversation with not excluding the kind of traditional forms of visibility? And then also another question maybe to think about at the same time is the idea of this global versus local. So if you publish in kind of really high impact venues, there are very few Africans there, but then we also have very few local venues that Africans are kind of publishing in. So how do we bridge these 2 gaps? So 2 questions. One is on visibility of other kind of non-traditional research sites, and the other one is kind of a more global versus local publishing. And feel free to take in either of them, the panelists.
I don't know who wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Dr. Klingner, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I think on the first one, bringing in, sort of these activities outside maybe academia. So what I've seen with some universities is that they do require that it's mostly in humanity departments where they require students to engage in some form of community engagement project, right? So where you participate in solving problems in societies as a group, and that does not necessarily have to do with developing technology or using technology, but it sort of leads you to an understanding of societal challenges that are out there. But I think can also help to sort of inspire new ways of doing things based on traditional practices. Right? And I think it does require that various universities sort of have curriculum that is focused in advancing areas of the economy that are predominant in the region. Right? If we look at the example of Wits University, it's in Johannesburg, which is known for mining. So it's got a huge school of mining because it was built there to serve the neighboring regions. I think the same with other universities. So I think having students also engaging outside the university rather than just focusing on developing technology, for looking at computer science or engineering. And the second one on visibility, I think I like this idea of being globally competitive and locally relevant. So we have to sort of balance the 2. I think global visibility, as Dr. Klingner mentioned with the example of Egypt and collaborating with Europe and other continents, that global visibility can lead to new opportunities. That can be funding and also business opportunities. And I think that also builds a track record. I think in order to attract funding internationally, or anywhere for that matter, you need to have a track record. So your work has to be visible. And also, as humans, we want to sort of interact with people we're familiar with. So if you're not participating at these international conferences, it's very difficult to just email someone and ask to collaborate on a project or on a funding proposal. So it's very important that we increase participation of Africans in these international venues. Locally, we also need to create our own venues where we come together as Africans, but also bring in the rest of the world to discuss around issues that affect Africa and some more localized regions, but also in a way that produces new knowledge that's relevant to the rest of the world. So we need to be able to bring in the international community to events that are happening in South Africa, in Africa, in various countries. And I think we should not fall into the trap of branding problems as African. It's a problem. If we want to solve it, there could be other regions that are outside Africa that have similar problems. And if we brand them as such, then they'll be able to come in and contribute and also leverage whatever solutions that we come up with.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Klingner, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that question as well.
Yeah. Yes, I think the visibility is very important, both locally as also globally. So yes, one should aim for the high impact journals where one combines simulation and experiments and show some new stuff, but also the local things like doing some small workshops with the community, with children, or using like LinkedIn to show all kind of activities at the university that the previous students, the former students and the actual students at the moment, they can hear about what is going on at the university and connect if they are interested. Yes.
Thank you very much. And coming to the final question, which is a really good one, and maybe I'll give everybody just 1 minute to respond. So how can African countries build this self-sustaining robotics innovation ecosystem that moves beyond kits and hosting competitions to producing locally relevant intellectual property and solves Africa-specific challenges in agriculture, health, logistics, and manufacturing? So it's a hard question to answer, but if you were to give 1 minute response to that, what do you think the silver bullet could be from each of your perspectives?
I think it starts from the education and building university, and then the people go out and they will solve the problems. I think so.
Thank you very much. Dr. Makondo, to you to conclude.
Yeah, to add to that, I think we also need to bring in industry and look for ways to meaningfully co-create new knowledge and innovation that addresses problems and thus incentivize them to work with us. I think we have many silos within academia and also now more broadly between academia and industry. I think given that we're in a climate where government funding and R&D is small, then we need other ways of funding research.
Oh, no, thank you very much. And a big thank you to the panelists for a lot of these insights. And I think we've concluded that university and industry are the key components. So I'm glad that we got representation from both of them. For more insights on these, please read our report. And I'm going to hand it back to Kenne, who is going to introduce our next panel. Thank you very much.